From victim to hero, how one girl's courage inspired an entire school. A story by Heartfelt Tales. It happened on a rainy Tuesday afternoon, the kind of day that already made school feel heavier than usual. The sky was dark, thunder rumbled in the distance, and inside Westbridge High, the air was just as stormy for 16-year-old Emily Carter. She wasn't the type to make trouble or even draw attention. She kept to herself, her head usually buried in books, her quiet smile the only thing people noticed. But that day everything changed. That was the day Emily, the girl everyone thought was fragile and defenseless, became something no one would ever forget. Emily had always been different from her classmates. While other teenagers spent their time gossiping about who was dating whom or planning weekend parties, she found solace in the pages of classic novels and poetry collections. Her teachers loved her thoughtful essays and insightful class discussions, but her peers saw her intellectual nature as something to mock rather than admire. She had grown accustomed to eating lunch alone, walking the hallways with her eyes down, and finding empty corners of the library where she could disappear into her books. The bullying hadn't started immediately. At first, it was just whispers and sideways glances. "There goes the bookworm," they'd say, or, "Does she even know how to talk to real people?" Emily had learned to tune out most of it, believing that if she stayed invisible enough, they would eventually lose interest and move on to someone else. But bullies have a way of sensing vulnerability, and Emily's quiet nature made her an easy target. It started during lunch break. Emily had just finished eating alone by the library steps, her usual spot where she could watch the rain streak down the tall windows while reading her worn copy of To Kill a Mockingbird. She was lost in Scout Finch's world when three boys, Travis, Cole, and Jared, decided to corner her. They were the kind of boys who thrived on making others feel small, football players who thought their popularity made them untouchable. Travis, the ringleader, leaned against the wall, a cruel grin stretching across his face. Well, if it isn't Little Mouse Emily," Travis said, stepping closer. His voice carried that particular tone bullies perfect, loud enough for others to hear, mocking enough to humiliate. "Where's your little book now? Can't hide behind it forever." Emily's heart began to race, but she stayed quiet, clutching her bag tighter. She'd endured their taunts before, the shoves in the hallway, the whispers that followed her from class to class. Usually, they would say something cruel and move on, satisfied with her visible discomfort. But today, there was something different in their eyes. Today, they weren't content with words. "You know what your problem is, Emily?" Cole chimed in, his voice dripping with false concern. "You think you're better than everyone else. Walking around with your nose in those books, acting like you're so smart. Maybe we should teach her a lesson about the real world," Jared added, cracking his knuckles in a way that made Emily's stomach drop. Before she could react or call for help, they surrounded her. Travis grabbed one arm while Cole took the other, and despite her struggles and pleas for them to stop, they dragged her toward the nearest bathroom. The hallways were mostly empty during lunch period, and those few students who saw what was happening either looked away or pretended not to notice. Emily's heart hammered against her ribs as she realized no one was coming to help her. They dragged her into the girls' bathroom, ignoring her screams for them to stop. The sound of the lock clicking behind them echoed off the tiled walls like a death sentence. Emily had never felt so trapped, so powerless. The bathroom smelled of industrial cleaning supplies and fear, her own fear, sharp and metallic in her throat. "You think you're too good to talk to us?" Cole sneered, his face twisted with a cruelty that seemed to feed on her terror. "Let's see how quiet you are after this." What happened next would replay in Emily's mind for months afterward. Before she could react, Jared and Travis grabbed her by the arms, their grip so tight she knew there would be bruises the next day. They dragged her toward the nearest stall, and Emily fought with everything she had. Tears streamed down her face as she kicked and twisted, trying desperately to break free. But they were stronger, bigger, and they had planned this. And then, they dunked her head into the toilet. Cold, Dirty water filled her nose and mouth, and panic consumed every rational thought. Her lungs burned as she struggled for air, her panicked gasps muffled by their laughter. The humiliation was worse than the physical discomfort. This wasn't just bullying, it was an assault on her dignity, her humanity. Every second stretched like an eternity until finally, they pulled her up just to shove her down again, their laughter echoing off the bathroom walls like the sound of her own breaking spirit. "How's that book learning helping you now, bookworm?" Travis taunted, his voice seeming to come from very far away through the ringing in Emily's ears. But in that moment, something inside Emily snapped. All the months of enduring their cruelty, all the times she had walked away rather than fight back, all the silent lunches and lonely hallways, it all crystallized into something raw and uncontainable. The fear she had carried for so long transformed into fury, and with it came a strength she never knew she possessed. With a burst of adrenaline that surprised even her, Emily wrenched her arm free from Jared's grip. Water dripped from her hair as she shoved him with both hands, using every ounce of strength in her body. He stumbled backward into a stall door with a loud crash that seemed to shake the entire bathroom. Travis lunged to grab her again, clearly not expecting this sudden resistance from the girl they had always seen as weak and defenseless. But Emily's adrenaline had fully taken over now. She kicked him in the stomach with her knee, sending him crashing into the row of sinks. The sound of his body hitting the porcelain was sharp and satisfying. Cole, realizing that their victim had become something dangerous, tried to hold her from behind. But Emily had found something primal within herself, something that refused to be a victim any longer. She grabbed the edge of the heavy stall door and slammed it with all her strength and fury. The metal door struck his face with a sickening crack that seemed to echo forever, and he screamed, clutching his nose as blood poured between his fingers. The bathroom fell silent except for the sound of dripping water from Emily's hair and Cole's muffled sobs. The boys who had moments ago been laughing at her humiliation were now groaning in pain and shock, their eyes wide with disbelief. Emily stood there in the sudden quiet, breathing hard, her hands shaking, not with fear anymore, but with fury and a newfound strength that seemed to pulse through her veins. She walked up to Travis, who was struggling to get up from beside the sinks, clutching his stomach. Water still dripped from her hair onto the bathroom floor as she looked him straight in the eyes, and for the first time in months, she felt powerful. "You think I'm weak?" she said, her voice trembling but clear and loud. "This is the last time you ever touch me. Ever. And if you even think about doing this to anyone else, you'll have to deal with me." Travis froze. The fire in Emily's eyes wasn't something any of them had ever seen before, it was the look of someone who had finally found their strength and would never give it up again. Without another word, she grabbed her soaked backpack and stormed out of the bathroom, leaving the three bullies behind, battered and speechless. News of what happened spread through Westbridge High like wildfire. By the end of the day, everyone knew that Emily Carter, the quiet girl nobody paid attention to, had fought back and won. The story grew with each telling. Some said she had knocked out all three boys, others claimed she had used some kind of martial arts. But the core truth remained the same: Emily had stood up for herself, and she had won. Teachers intervened quickly once word reached the administration. The three boys were found in the bathroom, Cole still bleeding from his broken nose, all of them claiming they had just been joking around when Emily went crazy. But their story fell apart under questioning, especially when other students came forward to report the months of harassment they had witnessed. The principal, Mrs. Davidson, called Emily into her office that afternoon. Emily sat across from the desk, her hair finally dry but still smelling faintly of bathroom cleaner, expecting to be suspended or expelled. Instead, Mrs. Davidson looked at her with something that might have been pride. "Emily," she said carefully, "what those boys did to you was completely unacceptable. They've been suspended for 2 weeks, and their parents have been notified. But I need to ask, are you okay?" For the first time since the incident, Emily's composure cracked. She had been running on adrenaline for hours, but now, in the safety of the principal's office, the full weight of what had happened hit her. She began to cry, not just from fear or shame, but from the release of months of bottled-up pain and frustration. I couldn't let them do that to me anymore, she whispered through her tears. I was so tired of being afraid. Mrs. Davidson came around the desk and handed Emily a box of tissues. You shouldn't have had to handle this alone, she said. We failed you by not stopping this sooner. But Emily, what you did today, standing up for yourself, that took incredible courage. That night, Emily sat in her room, a towel wrapped around her freshly washed hair, staring at herself in the mirror. Her parents had been called to the school and heard the whole story. They sat with her now, their faces a mixture of concern, pride, and guilt that they hadn't realized how bad the bullying had become. Sweetheart, her mother said, brushing a strand of hair from Emily's face, we're so proud of you for standing up for yourself. But we're also sorry that you felt like you had to handle this alone. Her father, usually a man of few words, pulled her into a hug. No one should ever make you feel like you don't matter, he said firmly. And if anyone tries to hurt you again, they'll have to answer to us. Emily cried that night, not just from fear or shame, but from releasing months of pain she had carried in silence. And when she woke up the next morning, something fundamental had changed inside her. She wasn't going to let anyone, ever again, make her feel like she didn't deserve respect and dignity. The days that followed were difficult in ways Emily hadn't expected. Some kids whispered about her fight, and not all of the whispers were kind. Some called her a psycho for breaking Cole's nose, others spread rumors that she had attacked the boys unprovoked. But for every cruel whisper, there was someone else, usually another student who had been bullied themselves, who looked at her with admiration and respect. Sarah Martinez, a quiet freshman who had been having her lunch money stolen by older students, approached Emily by the library steps a week after the incident. I heard what you did, Sarah said shyly. I just wanted to say, thank you. Those guys used to mess with me too, and they haven't bothered me since. More students came forward with similar stories. Emily began to realize that her moment of courage had ripple effects she never could have imagined. She had not only stood up for herself, she had stood up for everyone who had ever felt powerless in the face of cruelty. Determined to channel her newfound strength constructively, Emily decided to join the school's self-defense club. At first, it was intimidating. She felt weak and clumsy compared to the other students who had been training for months or even years. But every time she thought about that bathroom, about being forced down into that toilet, she pushed harder. The instructor, Ms. Rivera, was a former military officer who had started the club specifically to help students build confidence and learn to protect themselves. She noticed Emily's determination immediately and took special interest in her progress. Emily, she said after a particularly intense training session, you've got something most people never develop, a fighter's heart. Not because you want to hurt people, but because you've learned you deserve to be respected. Never lose that. Those words became Emily's mantra. They gave her strength when whispers and rumors tried to tear her down, and they reminded her that what happened in that bathroom didn't break her, it built her into someone stronger than anyone had expected. Months later, when Travis, Cole, and Jared returned from their suspension, the dynamic at Westbridge High had completely shifted. They found that their former victims no longer cowered when they walked by. Other students had been inspired by Emily's example to stand up for themselves and each other. The three former bullies discovered that their reign of terror was over. But Emily didn't let her victory make her bitter or vengeful. One afternoon, she saw Jared sitting alone behind the bleachers, looking lost and ashamed. Emily hesitated for a moment, then walked over to him. You don't have to apologize, she said quietly, but you should know, what you guys did to me, it could have ruined me. It could ruin someone else. You can be better than that. Jared looked up at her with surprise and something that might have been gratitude. I know, he said finally. I've been thinking about it every day since. I don't know why I'm sorry, Emily. I really am. Emily nodded, feeling a weight lift from her shoulders that she didn't even know she'd been carrying. Forgiveness, she realized, wasn't about letting people off the hook, it was about freeing herself from the burden of anger. By the end of the school year, Emily had become much more than the girl who fought back. She was now a mentor in the self-defense club, teaching other students not just physical techniques but the mental strength to stand up for themselves. She spoke at school assemblies about bullying, about finding courage when you feel powerless, and about the importance of speaking up for others. But perhaps most importantly, Emily had learned that strength comes in many forms. Sometimes it's the courage to fight back when cornered. Sometimes it's the wisdom to forgive those who hurt you. And sometimes it's the determination to help others find their own strength. One day after school, as she walked past the bathroom where everything had changed, Emily stopped and looked at the door. She could go in, but she didn't need to anymore. That place no longer held power over her. Instead, she smiled and whispered, "Never again," before walking away with her head held high. Emily Carter's story spread far beyond Westbridge High, inspiring countless others to find their own courage. She proved that strength doesn't always look like muscles or loud voices, it can come from the quietest person in the room when they finally stand up and say, "Enough." And to anyone out there feeling helpless, drowning under the weight of bullies or cruelty, Emily's story carries one essential message: you are stronger than you know. One moment of courage can change everything, not just for you, but for everyone whose life you touch. If Emily's journey moved you, if it gave you hope or made you think of someone who needs this message, please leave a comment below, we'd love to hear your thoughts and stories. And if you want more powerful, heartfelt tales like this one, make sure you like this video, share it with your friends, and subscribe to Heartfelt Tales. Together, we can stand up, speak out, and remind the world that courage lives in all of us.